Well, it says we're live. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. It's Tuesday. It's 4 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern, midnight in Dublin, 1 a.m. in Milan in Italy, 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. Wednesday morning in Australia, somewhere around 3 in the afternoon in New Zealand, I believe. And please tell me about that. And it's Facebook Live. And we are good to go. And my guest today is Dr. Sally Lamont. And we have a critically important topic to talk about, and that is how do we strengthen our immune system and what can we do to protect ourselves in this time of such crisis? So, Dr. Lamont, welcome. Oh, I caught you at a bad moment there.
I took a sip. I'm a well-hydrated gal.
Well, that's critically important, isn't it? Hydration.
It really is. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Oh, thanks so much. And Marzi says hello to everyone, and Gio is saying something. I can't quite interpret baby cries yet, but he's saying something right now. So maybe it's hello. I'm going to pull up usually Marzi pulls this up for me, but I'm going to pull up today on my Facebook to see who's out there and to give you guys some acknowledgement. So here we go. Let's see. It'll take me a minute. So Dr. Sally, let's start with some 101 basics on immune system function. Now, are we destined to have an immune system that works the way it's always worked, or can we make some changes?
Oh, we can definitely make some changes. I think so many of us just think that this body is static, it's controlled by our genes, and that we don't really have a lot of flexibility or ability to contribute to it. But I don't think there could be anything further from the truth. I mean, when we eat and live in a way that supports our health, our immune system follows, and it can really go from weak and vulnerable to much healthier and in balance when we take good care of it.
So what's the first thing on the checklist that you'd like to talk about here tonight? Well, we've already talked about water. Let's stay with water for a minute. How important is water to this process?
Well, water is the fluid that comprises about 70% of our body, just like the earth. And it is what constitutes the form of the blood and the oh so important lymphatic fluid. So when we're dehydrated, everything slows down: kidney function, liver function, and certainly immune function. So I'm a big proponent of eating, first of all, a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables, which naturally come with a lot of water. But beyond that, we drink, I'm kind of in the eight ounce glasses a day group, so 64 ounces. Is that how you feel about it, Dr. Tom?
If we are not hydrated well enough, we accumulate debris from the exhaust of our cellular activity. And yes, if we can't get that exhaust out, it accumulates, and that's what we call toxicity. Yeah. You back your car into a snowbank, and the exhaust pipe gets full of snow. That smoke's going to come back into the engine. And that's what happens with us if we aren't hydrated well enough. And we recommend a formula somewhere between a ½ ounce to 1 ounce of water per pound body weight. For example, Marzi's primary lactation coach is emphasizing 1 ounce per pound body weight. And so that's a lot of water, which means Marzi, as she says, I'm going to be peeing all day. You say, well, yeah, that's the idea, is to make sure you've got plenty of hydration and there's not a lot of accumulated debris, because if there's accumulated debris, it gets into the breast milk, which gets into baby, whose immune system is so compromised because it's not developed yet. It takes, the first 6 months of a baby's immune system is really mom's immune cells being transferred to baby. That's primarily because baby's building the immune system after birth. So hydration's a critically important tool here, just critically important.
Agreed.
So Dr. Sally, what's next on the list after water?
Well, I really want to help your listeners make the connection between the way we eat and live and the function of our immune system. And I think it starts with doing a little like immune system 101, because we have the ability to use this winter and this spring to really grow our health so we can come through this pandemic stronger than when we went into it. And I kind of think we have a magical immune system that's underappreciated. I want you to think of your immune system as your body's internal defense team, almost like your military. Even though I'm not much of a military person, it's a very good example because it's working 24/7 to protect you from foreign invaders. So if you kind of think of yourself as the king or queen of your kingdom or queendom, and your body as that homeland, and you then think of your immune system as your personal internal defense team, that's a good way to start. Now, we tend to think of, organs as like the heart and the liver. We know vaguely where they are, but the immune system is scattered around our body. We have lymph nodes in our neck and armpits and groin and all around our intestinal tract. We have glands like the thymus gland, and tissues like the bone marrow, and then specialized white blood cells that we'll talk about that coordinate and work as a team to prevent us from invasion by foreign invaders like viruses, bacteria, parasites, pollens, toxins, and allergens, certainly. And there are three main branches, and this is one I know that's dear to your heart, Dr. Tom, and that is the protective barriers. And then we'll talk about the innate and adaptive immune system briefly.
Well, I'm going to pause you for 1 minute because it's the information is fabulous, and it's a lot of overwhelm for people to try to absorb when we're going that fast. So we're going to take a little bit slower. So we talk about the immune system. I've talked about it for years as the armed forces, and so I'm right with you on that whole concept. Let me just give a shout out though. Marilyn was the first one here today. Marilyn Lambert says, hello from Newfoundland. My daughter Brittany is listening with me tonight for the first time. Hi, Brittany. Welcome, and thanks for being here for that. Brenda says, hello from Kentucky. Glad to hear baby and mom are well. Thank you, Brenda. Amal's here and says, thank you for showing up every Tuesday. Great for community and support. Thank you, Amal. Rich is here from Cleveland. Kat's here from Kentucky near Cincinnati. Marianne's here from Akron. Errol's here. What do you recommend for PTSD? Is it EMDR or hypnotherapy or limbic system retraining? That's a complicated question to answer, Errol. PTSD, I think, and I'm gonna ask Dr. Sally for her opinion on this also. But to me, the first and most important thing is to recognize, hey, I've got, I'm having sensitivity reactions to something I've experienced in my life. And we can put a name on it like PTSD. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means that there's some adaptation that needs to occur. And in terms of what that adaptation would be, it depends on the individual. And I don't mean to be evasive, but for some people, your question's right on the money, Errol. Hypnotherapy is great. For some people, EMDR is great. For some people, meditation is great. For some people, prayer is great. The first thing, if you're looking and you don't have a coach to guide you in this right now, and because you're asking a critically important question, the first thing is to recognize, okay, I need a little help here. And you're doing that. So you're already past step one. Then just ask for, just close your eyes and say, I need a little guidance here. Whether you're a religious person or not, The phrase that Marzi has taught me so many times comes from Dr. Joe Dispenza. And that is, it's time to stop living out of the memories of your past and rather your visions of the future. Now, that's easier said than done, especially when there's been a trauma that's created PTSD um, override in our day-to-day living. But as you think about and you put a little time into imagining a future that you'd really like for yourself, then things start lining up and the right people come along or the right information comes along for you. That's the place to start. I can't tell you that one's better than the other because my experience has been that's not the case. Hypnotherapy is great. EMDR is great. Prayer, walking meditation, depends on the individual. And if you try something, my rule of thumb is I give it 3 shots. I suffered PTSD when my father died. It was very sudden and unexpected. And I noticed that when I would be working with patients for weeks afterwards, I was a chiropractor, and so people are laying on the table, and all of a sudden I noticed tears are falling on the person's shirt. They're on their stomach, and I'm, what? Oh, that's me. My God, that's me. And then I realized that I had some PTSD going on, and I didn't know what it was. So I needed some help. And so I said, I need some help here. And I did a rule. I had a rule. All right, I need to find a therapist to work with. So I can just share with you my experience. And that was, I said, all right, I'm going to try somebody and I'll give them 3 visits. If I don't know I'm in the right place within 3 visits, I'm out of there. That I should see some changes right away, within a few visits. So I said 3. I went through 5 therapists, literally. And it was the 5th therapist. So the first 4, 3 visits each, that's 12 visits over the course of a few months. I didn't feel like I was making headway. And then the 5th person, I knew right away in the first 5 minutes, this is where I need to be. So you have to have persistence when you're looking to address a traumatic incident that's occurred in your life. No matter what it is, you have to have persistence and know that it's not you if the results aren't coming. If you're really like putting your effort out and the results aren't coming, you just have to find the right guide, if you will. It took me 5. Yeah. Took me 5. Dr. Sal, you want to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, I agree with you. The therapies that I have found to be most effective in my patient base, it's EMDR. There is something very interesting about how the brain can be rewired with that. But I agree, it takes patience, time, willingness, and true openness. And I'll add one other thing that's it's a little daring to share, but for some really severe cases, I'm sure you've heard this too, Dr. Tom, psilocybin mushrooms are being used that in therapeutic settings. This isn't just do it at home and have a party. This is guided work, but it is immensely helpful for a lot of people who use it.
There's a lot of studies that have been coming out in the last, I'd say 8 or 9 years that I've experienced on that topic of low dose psychoactives, which is what most pharmaceuticals are. They alter your thinking. Most pharmaceuticals, they alter your brain hormones called neurotransmitters, where low dose psychoactives have been shown to be really effective in some cases. Now, it's interesting you said that your patient base is an EMDR base. Can you tell us, for those that don't know, what is EMDR?
I don't know that I can recite the name of it exactly. Eye movement, but it is a treatment where there is it is the eyes follow a wand usually, and there is something about the way that the brain processes that through the optic nerve that rewires and unlocks the trauma as I understand it, from the therapists that I work with. And if I'd known we were going to talk about this, I would have brushed up
I
on
understand.
that.
No, I understand, but you're right. Eye movement is a temperature gauge on the dashboard of your outer body. You know, if you think of a car, there's two ways to measure the temperature in the engine of a car. Some cars have a hot light that comes on the dashboard. That light comes on too late, can't drive anymore, shut the car down, fix the problem. That's when you get a diagnosis of schizophrenia or major depressive disorder. The hot light's on the dashboard. Other cars have temperature gauges that say you're going the wrong way here. And Ella, it sounds like you're in the temperature gauge category. You know, what can I do for PTSD? And EMDR is a technique where your therapist is working with you, watching your eye movements as you're like imagining different aspects of how to respond to the trauma. And it gives them guidance on how to work with you. So it's a great technique.
I got the title. It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Way to go. And that says it all, doesn't it? But Ella, I've got to tell you one more thing. You know, I taught martial arts for many, many years. It's where I thought my profession would be when I was young. And people would ask me all the time afterwards when I was a doctor in practice, and we, you know, if it came up in conversation, they want their children to study martial arts. Which martial arts should we do? Which one's the best? You know, which technique to deal with PTSD is the best? And the answer is there is no best. It's in martial arts, I would always say it's the teacher, not the technique. It's the teacher you want your child to model after, that they emanate a way of looking at life that is not aggressive and hurting people, but rather protective and finding some inner peace. So the same concept with dealing with PTSD, it's the therapist that comes up in front of you. That's why I did 5 different therapists with my father's death, sudden death, until I found the guy that I knew was perfect for me. So be patient as you go through your searching to find the right person. Doc Sally, anything else you'd like to add to that?
I agree completely. Yeah.
Let's see. Mary Agnes says, the exhaust of our cellular activity. So well said. Thanks for breaking that down with such a great comparison, Dr. Tom. Thank you, MA. Thank you so much. Kat has a question. There's controversy now over whether oils, good oils, avocado, olive oil, are good/bad for the body. Same with apple cider vinegar. Now I'm questioning using these food items that I thought were so good for me. Let's talk about these things in terms of the immune system, Dr. Sally. What about good fats and the immune system?
Well, I believe that the good fats that we should be eating are avocado oil, olive oil. These are clean. They are really healthy oils that are ideally not rancid and therefore won't be a toxin to the body. These fats are the backbone of the anti-inflammatory cytokines or chemical messengers of the body, especially fish oils. So I don't know any reason why we wouldn't want to use avocado oil, olive oil, and fish oils, as long as they're clean, organic, and not rancid. Then they're providing the essential fatty acids that our body needs to control the inflammatory responses.
You are right on the money. I fully agree with you. And you mentioned as long as they're good oils, good avocado oil, good olive oil. So one of the things, Kat, that you may have read, I don't know what you read, but one of the things you may have read is that these oils can go rancid on you. And the rule of thumb when you're cooking with oils, never smoke the oil. Never. When you cook at such a high temperature that the oil smokes, the oil's gone rancid and it's producing a lot of molecules that cause more inflammation in your body. One of the benefits of avocado oil is that it has a high smoke point. So if you want to like flash saute, I think Chinese cooking in a wok has got really high heat. You know, you cook it really quick so it's still crispy and all that, but they have really high heat. And if you use the wrong oils and you start smoking the oil, you're going to throw a lot more inflammatory molecules into your system by eating the food that's cooked in a smoking oil. So avocado oil is a higher temperature, which means you can turn the heat up more. Now, olive oil is not a high temperature oil. So when we cook, well, no, I'll speak for myself. Marzi's much better at this than I am. But when I'm cooking, I will use avocado oil. And when the meal is done, you know, and I take my Italian spices, and here's a secret to a good halfway chef to make his food taste really good. I'm being generous to myself by calling myself a chef. But you know, the little countertop coffee grinders that you get, you know, you put coffee beans in them. I have two on the counter. One's for coffee, one's for herbs. And I put my herbs, you know, I buy Italian seasoning, organic in the store, a bottle of Italian seasoning, but I throw them in there and then I throw them on the food because you bring out more of the oils in the herbs when you do that. And then when I turn the heat off, the thing's done, then I pour a little extra virgin olive oil on top of it. I don't cook with extra virgin olive oil because it's got a low threshold temperature before it starts smoking. So that's the only things I can think of. Or if you, first, that it's good fats for you. Second, if you don't have a gallbladder, if you lost your gallbladder to surgery, then you're going to have a hard time with fats, any kind of fats, even good fats. You're going to have a harder time utilizing and absorbing those fats. So you want to take digestive enzymes with every meal if you've had your gallbladder taken out. Those are the only things I can think of. Dr. Sally, anything else on your plate for that one?
I think it's really important to smell the oil before you cook with it, because many oils do go rancid, and they have you can tell something is wrong. It's really clear with butter, for example. Butter has a lot of stinky butyric acid in it when it's gone bad. And just don't use an oil that's rancid. And I too have two coffee grinders, one for spices primarily, and pulsing coriander, cumin, fennel seeds to put into curries. And if you toss those into the oil as you're heating them, it really releases those aromatic oils. But I'm with you, avocado oil is the preferred cooking oil. And I do cook with olive oil, but I don't crank it up. I leave that. I do not go beyond the medium temperature there. And it's best for dressings and as a finishing oil, like you said.
Right, right. So let's go back to immunity here. And you know, with your experience, what do you think? What works to strengthen one's immunity?
Well, eating a clean diet that is providing a range of the phytochemicals, the colors of the rainbow in your fruits and vegetables. We have to have really our own USDA has at times recommended as many as 9 to 13 servings of vegetables and fruits per day. I think they've got it at around 7 now. That really have all the colors. These phytochemicals, they're actually the pigments in these fruits and vegetables, communicate with our genes, with the nucleus of the cell, and instruct it to function properly across the board, reducing the risk of a range of chronic diseases and helping our body function properly. So that's the platform. To that, I want to make sure we have the high quality oils we've been talking about, including fish oils, because they are really providing that EPA and the also important brain essential fatty acid DHA, which young mothers all supplement with these days. And then adequate protein. And the kind of protein really probably varies with the individual. If one is committed to a vegetarian or vegan diet, you'll be getting that from grains and beans. Many of us, and I think you're with me here, Dr. Tom, require a little bit more protein and thrive with some flesh protein in our diets, because those have readily available all 9 essential amino acids. Especially as we age, we may need a little bit more protein because our immune system goes through what's called immune senescence, which is simply the aging process. Our immune system gets old by the time we're into our 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, if we're not eating right. When we eat right, we can keep not only our immune system, but our overall health functioning well. So I want to see a platform of veggies and fruits, essential oils, protein, and enough starch in the form of whatever one might be able to handle with certain grains and beans. I know in the autoimmune protocols, we have to limit those, but we want to make sure we get some sweet potatoes or some butternut squash. So we have something, especially during these cold winter months, to keep us satisfied.
Really good answer. Thank you so much. Shanquila has a question here. Really good question. Hi, can toxins like mycotoxins and glyphosate, gasoline additives accumulate over time, or are they in and out of your body very fast?
That's an interesting question. And it varies with the toxin.
That's right. That's right. These fat soluble toxins, they store in your fat cells. You don't get more fat cells after the age of 2, maybe 3. We've got the number for life, but they just get bigger and smaller. And what do they get bigger with? Toxic crud that your body says, your brain says, get this off the highway, get this off out of circulation. So your fat cells are the depositories of all of the toxic crud that we've been exposed to if your body can't detox and get rid of it. So yes, this stuff is accumulative in your body. And when you do a detox program, you have to do it gently. We always recommend stepping into it slowly, because if you go aggressive with a major detox right away, you can flush out a lot of this stuff out of your fat cells really quickly, and you get pretty sick. Doctors in the old days used to call it a healing crisis. Well, you're having a bit of a healing crisis. You'll be fine. No, it was too many toxins being released too quickly, right? You got to slow the process down a bit.
Yeah, those fat cells are a reservoir for toxins. And we used to think that they were just a storage spot, but in fact, the fat cells are now considered a reservoir for those pro-inflammatory compounds. So yeah, we do release that. And what about the mycotoxins, though? I'd like to hear your thought on that.
Oh, mycotoxins accumulate in the body substantially. And when people are identified, there's 2 tests that we recommend. We'll post the links for the 2 tests here. One is from Great Plains. It's a urine test that looks at the exhaust from mycotoxins. And the other one is from Vibrant, their fungal panel that looks at antibodies to mycotoxins. And when we store these things, get stored in your cell, in your brain for years and years. You have to get them out. So the first thing you do when you identify this person has a mycotoxin problem, look for the source. Where's the source? Is it where they live? Is it where they work? Have your home professionally checked and then remediated if need be. And if you can't find a source, and you don't live in the woods where there's mold spores in the air, then you're dealing with the cumulative levels inside your body. We've had patients like that over the years where they moved out of a moldy house and 2 years later, they still aren't well. They're better, but they're not well. And they're crystal clear the place they live in now. They've checked it. There's no mold there. And it's in their body. And you got to flush that stuff out. Part of that is saunas are really excellent for that. Almost essential in my view. Aerobic exercise is essential. Slowly flushing this stuff out, lots of water, hydrating, and some detox supplements to help. Dr. Sally, anything else you'd like to add to that?
Not at this time.
Okay. Cheryl asked, do you use LDN for autoimmune diseases? Yes. LDN is low dose naltrexone. It's very helpful for symptom relief. It doesn't deal with arresting the development of the autoimmune disease. It's really helpful for non-traumatic, safe pharmaceutical symptom relief. It's excellent for that. Jennifer asks, is vitamin D2 good for immunity? Doctor prescribed D2 instead of D3. Dr. Sally, you want to start with that one?
Well, I'm a bigger fan of vitamin D3. That's the form that is easy for our body to use, and it is essential in this pandemic. Many studies have shown around the world that the populations that are having the worst outcomes with COVID-19 are the ones with the lowest levels of vitamin D, and those populations who are split in a hospital even and given D3, I don't believe they're giving D2, are the ones who can actually end up leaving the ICU, and those who didn't are the ones that go ahead to a demise. So it's a critical supporter for our immune system, helping to stimulate white blood cells, really an effective tool as an antiviral agent. And the best way to get it is sun exposure. Not a lot, just enough. 10 or 15 minutes a day without sunscreen, even before noon and later afternoon is very helpful. But of course, I supplement, and I'm sure you do too.
Agreed. Fully agree with you. We talked about it a few weeks ago. I think I showed everyone the slide back then that in a study that came out of Indonesia, people in ICU, if their vitamin D level was below 19, every one of them died. If their vitamin D level was above 31, none of them died. So it's just a simple no-brainer. Everyone needs to make sure their vitamin D levels are high enough. We recommend between 50 and 75 nanograms, Ng per ml. That's the goal. And we'll post the link for the simple finger prick blood test to find out what your vitamin D level is for each of you in your family. If you don't do the vitamin D test, my words for you, shame on you. It's inexpensive, it's simple, and it can save your family's life. So make sure you know what your vitamin D level is. Yeah. Rissa says, Dr. Sally is full of knowledge, very helpful information. I think you make a great team. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us today. That's really great. You're welcome, Rissa. Thank you for the feedback. Since I've been dairy-free due to food intolerance, I have high oxalate issue. What can I do to enjoy those foods, or should I avoid them? Dr. Sally, you want to start with that one?
Well, I don't think personally of dairy products being a high oxalate food. I tend to think of that as more dark leafy greens, the classic example of spinach that leaves that strange texture in your mouth. It's a little bit bitey. Do you think of dairy products as an oxalate-rich food group?
No, not at all. But if you've gone dairy-free, way to go. Obviously, it's a value for you because it's changed your metabolism.
Absolutely.
And your metabolism's out of balance, and you've taken a step in the right direction, but there's more you have to do. And don't write to me here now and say, well, what do I have to do? I don't know what you have to do. You have to be checked by a functional medicine practitioner to figure out what you have to do. It's not as simple as take something for it. No, but I'm not aware of dairy being an oxalate food or having a direct impact on oxalates. But when you go dairy free, you've changed your metabolism. Way to go. And my guess is it's somewhere in your microbiome that's where we're going to find the answer to that one. That would be my guess, but you have to test to find out where it is that we need to go.
And I just want to add, I am with you on getting dairy products out of our diet, especially cow dairy. It's one thing to have a little sheep and goat cheese from time to time, but the milk itself it does contribute to mucus production. So
Right.
especially now in these winter months when we tend to pick up a little bit more mucus, mucus is a reservoir for microbes to live in, and cutting back on your dairy intake is one of the wisest things you can do.
Critically important, critically important. And I was talking about it's embarrassing to say 40 years ago, but we would say, look, dairy milk is meant for a cow. Do you want to look like a cow? And if you just sit in a coffee shop and watch the people go by, unfortunately, so many are packing extra weight. And most of them say, oh, but I love my cheese. And don't associate that these proteins you're getting are creating so much mucus, as Dr. Sally just said, and you can't digest these proteins thoroughly, and you get this toxic residue that gets stored in your fat cells, and you get bigger because your fat cells are plugging up. And this mucus, we used to talk about that a lot. I don't think we've ever had a case of recurrent sinus infections or recurrent ear infections that we didn't make dramatically better just by getting them off dairy. That's the first step, because mucus, when people have recurrent sinus infections, Mrs. Patient, or recurrent ear infections, your daughter is a human petri dish. Remember petri dishes that bacteria grow in? Well, when you eat dairy, when you get all this mucus and like that, you get all this mucus, bacteria loves to hang out in your sinuses or loves to hang out in your ear canal because there's no white blood cells, there's no immune system in the mucus because there's no blood vessels going into the mucus. There's no lymphatic vessels going into the mucus. It's just mucus. It's a petri dish. So bacteria grows in there, and when there's so much bacteria, now it touches up against the side of your ear canal or the side of your sinuses, and now you get inflammation on the side of the ear canal. Now you hurt. Now you've got an ear infection. Well, you've had an infection for weeks, most likely, but it was just in the mucus. That high concentration of bacteria was in the mucus. So the first thing you do for recurrent infections is get the mucus out. And the first thing you do to get the mucus out is get the dairy out. Oh, but I love my cheese. We'll put that on your tombstone. She loved her cheese.
And even worse is the ice cream. Those who will sit down and polish off a pint of ice cream at night. It's got allergens, casein and whey, and the lactose, the sugar. It's honestly an inflammation promoting food group. Now, I'm wondering what you think of something that I think we both saw at a conference. It's camel milk. Can you give me your thought on that?
I sure will. Before I do that, I have to comment on the ice cream. I have to come clean here. That in the 1980s, I opened my practice, working 12-hour days. Working really hard. Enjoyed it quite a bit, but I'd come home and I'd be really tired. And I'd often have a pint of Haagen-Dazs in one sitting, an entire pint, but only honey vanilla because there was no sugar in it. That's how I tried to rationalize that garbage in my mind. Oh, there's no sugar in it, it's fine for me. No. And I used to do triathlons. I stopped doing marathons because my knees started acting up. And so I was doing triathlons at that time. And I was getting chest pain on occasion. And by then, my father had died of a massive coronary, and so I was worried. So I went to what I thought was the best cardiovascular treatment center in Chicago and ran all their tests. I scored off their charts, very healthy, no problem. I said, well, where's my chest pain coming from? Well, we can give you a prescription for nitroglycerin. No, where's it coming from? Well, we don't know. We don't know where it's coming from. And so I had the chest pain one day again, and I said, I need some help here. I need some help. No, no, I love my Haagen-Dazs. It can't, my brain did all of this, right? But I went a week without Haagen-Dazs, and then I had a pint, really enjoyed it. Next day I had chest pain again. So that did it for me on ice cream. So even someone who was pretty knowledgeable at the time about the science, I still try to rationalize with my yabba, yabba, yabba. You're right. So we need to recognize that we all do that. Now, your question about camel's milk. It turns out that the milks that have been shown in general for most people to be safer if they have a cow milk sensitivity are goat, donkey, reindeer, and camel. Now, if you're in Alaska, reindeer milk is readily available. But if you're in the Middle East, reindeer milk is not, but camel milk is. And it turns out there's I believe they're an Amish group out of Arkansas that has a camel milk farm. And I met them at a conference one time. I always walk around and meet the vendors when I'm there. And really nice fella, really nice. And I said, camel's milk. He said, yes. I said, you guys are raising camels? He said, yeah. Showed me some pictures on. Okay, why camel's milk? And he started explaining a little science that he knew about this. And that caught my interest. Well, can we send you some, Doc? Can we send you some? And I'm trying to be polite, and I say, sure, thank you. So I gave them my card. They sent me some camel's milk. I put it in the refrigerator, but I can't imagine drinking the milk of a big, ugly, hairy animal like that. I just couldn't imagine it. So it sat in my refrigerator, and I never tried it. And a few months later, I'm at another conference. He's there again. He said, what'd you think of the milk? And I said, oh, I'm sorry, Matt. I travel so much that I didn't get to it in time. Well, we'll send you some more. Okay. So they did, and I tried it. It was really good. It was really good. It's a little bit lighter than cow's milk. It's not as thick, but not
as fatty.
Not as fatty, but easy to digest. No problem at all. No mucus for me, no chest pain, nothing. And so I have been recommending camel's milk, Dr. Sally, now for about 4 or 5 years as an alternative. And I believe we've got the link. We'll post the link here for the camel's milk that we recommend. They're grass-fed camels, and no antibiotics, nothing else to them. So it's a safe milk. Okay.
I too found it palatable.
Uh-huh. Nancy asked, do you think it's helpful to do liver flushes? How about coffee enemas? Dr. Sally, what would you say?
Wow. Well, I worked with coffee enemas 30 years ago when my first husband, the brilliant medical doctor, John Lamont, had cancer, and we did everything. It's part of the Gerson therapy. It is said to draw toxins out of the colon very effectively. You definitely get a buzz off of it because it is still being absorbed through the intestines. And I think it is potentially a valuable treatment. But what was the one right before? There were two things she mentioned.
Liver flushes.
Yeah, now that's a bit more challenging because those often, depending on what they are, how they're done, may include lemon juice and pretty large quantities of olive oil. And Dr. Tom, you mentioned earlier gallbladder disease if you have gallstones, that is certainly going to get the bile flowing. And if those stones are very large, they can get stuck in the bile duct and create a problem. If you know they're small, that's one way to do it. But I kind of prefer using herbs like milk thistle and dandelion, and supplements like N-acetylcysteine, herbs. Yeah, I would go with beet leaf, Russian black radish, dandelion, and milk thistle, probably before I do the oil and lemon juice flushes. How about you?
Two things. Coffee enemas can be of value, sometimes great value. The potential downside to that, and it's not a big deal, but it gives a little more vulnerability to having a sensitivity reaction. We hear that coffee is great to enhance your health and increase longevity. And then we hear that coffee puts you at risk of early death. And there are studies on both sides of the equation. But the difference is, do you carry the gene CYP1A2? If you carry the gene, and sorry for the geek stuff, guys, but it's a very simple test. The test, that gene is part of the detoxigenomic test, and we'll put the link here for the detoxigenomic test. There's a lot of great information on that test. But that gene would identify if you are a slow metabolizer. If your body is slow or sluggish at breaking down certain families of chemicals that use that genetic pathway to be broken down, you're at much higher risk of having a fatal first heart attack. And it goes up by the number of cups of coffee a day. For 1 cup of coffee a day was please don't hold me to the number, I don't quite remember it. 1 cup a day was something like 35% increased risk of a fatal first heart attack compared to people that don't have the CYP1A2 gene. But when you go up to 4 cups a day, it was over 400% increased risk of a fatal first heart attack. So you just have to check the gene. Everyone that drinks coffee should check this gene. And then you know, because your genes don't change for the rest of your life, you know, all right, is coffee okay for me or not? And in terms of doing a coffee enema, I don't think that's a big deal. I can't imagine it would be, but I'd just be a little cautious. I'd want to look at my patient's cardiovascular risk markers before I would recommend a coffee enema if they are a CYP1A2. We've used coffee enemas for many, many, many years, and they can be very helpful with that one caveat. Also, Marcy and I have gone to Swiss Mountain Clinic in Switzerland a number of times over the years. And when we go, we make an announcement, and then lots of people want to come. And so we're there with a lot of people who follow us, and we sit, and I'm not part of their treatment while they're there. We're all getting the same treatment, but we sit for meals every day together, and I'm there answering questions, and I'll do a couple of talks at night. But it's really casual, let your hair down and just hang out and joke about the treatments that you get. Like there's this French water therapy, and we call it the car wash, because you're laying on a table and these jets just go over you with the spray of water, and it's a lymphatic massage. It's really great. It's really great. Yeah. But in any event, they do liver flushes there. The first week of Swiss Mountain Clinic treatment protocols, and some people come for 1 week and some come for 2 or 3, but the first week is always the same for everyone, and that's to take care of the queen. And Dr. Petra, who runs the clinic, refers to the liver as the queen. You have to clean the oil filter before you try to detox the body. So liver flushes, the concept is a great one. The technique to use is dependent. And as Dr. Sally said, there's the apple juice, lemon juice, olive oil concepts. And I've done that for many years also, and that can be very helpful. But you got to be careful. If someone's got gallbladder symptoms, you don't want to flush those gallbladder stones down the bile duct. So you have to be really careful with that. But in general, both of those protocols can be helpful. As, by the way, we're going to be doing a whole detox event soon. I don't know if we'll have the link here today for you. I'm going to do a private detox event with a small group of people, and we'll include these kinds of concepts in there. And if we have the link ready, we'll post it today. If not, in a week or two, we'll be posting it. Nancy says, any comments about the COVID vaccine? Well, let's start first from the immune aspect of that. Dr. Sally, what would you say to your patients if they're asking about the COVID vaccine?
Well, it's a really interesting question. Vaccines have, in a sense, been used for hundreds of years. The old milkmaids of long ago recognized that if they took some, this is gross, but some of the purulent material from wounds and put it on bread and slapped it on the body, that it would help to protect against, God, what was that? I think it was smallpox back in the 1700s. And that's what tipped investigators or researchers back then into recognizing that there was a way to stimulate the immune response by exposing it to a little bit of the agent that causes it. And that's what vaccines do. They stimulate B cells within our immune system to react by teaching them by exposure to a little bit of that substance. Now, the thing that I like about this messenger RNA vaccine is it isn't using the live virus or even a dead virus. It's just making the immune system recognize the spike protein and telling it to make an antibody to that spike protein. So in some ways, I think of it as a little bit safer than some of the other vaccines that come from a pool of serum that may be contaminated with other viruses or prions or things we don't know about. My one last thought on this COVID vaccine is that it is, this isn't just something that they whipped up this year. Researchers have been working for the last 10 years to develop mRNA type technology. It just happened to have been applicable to this disease. And so it was rolled out quickly. So depending on a lot of different characteristics of a particular individual, I think that I think it's an okay thing to do. And now I know you may disagree with me there. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the matter.
No, not at all. You know, we have a chat room for faculty from the Institute for Functional Medicine, and we've been talking about this. And I have such great respect for my fellow faculty. They're some of the smartest clinicians in the world, and they just do deep dive into the literature all the time, which is why IFM is as great as it is, because the courses we put out are first class, second to none in the world. And our conversations recently have been more around, and there seems to be consensus, no one's arguing with this concept, that we're much more worried about the virus than we are the vaccine. And so if we can reduce our risks, that's really important. So I'm going to identify something here for everyone now. I'm going to share my screen for a minute. I didn't plan on doing this, but we're going to do it. And if you can see, let's bring this one up. Dr. Sally, can you see my screen right now?
Yes, I see a journal open.
Right. This is an article that came out today, just today, in the journal called Frontiers in Immunology. And if you look here, you see where I'm highlighting, it says percent reactivity, and there's 3 columns of percent reactivity, 4 columns, I'm sorry, 4 columns. Oops, let me get that out of there. You see these percent reactivity, and I know for everyone out there, this is going to look like Greek, but just think of these columns, percent reactivity. And this is what percentage of people reacted when, this is in the laboratory, not with people. If you got the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, what percent of people reacted and made antibodies to SARS-CoV-2? And you see to the spike protein that Dr. Sally was referring to, it's 100% of them. And all the way across the board to the next protein, the nucleoprotein, which is part of the virus, or the envelope protein, part of the virus, or the membrane protein, part of the virus. So that's the gift. Now, as you go down this list, what percentage of these tests reacted to different human tissue? It's called molecular mimicry. And if you can see the numbers here, let's see, let's go down. S100B is part of the blood-brain barrier, 9% to the spike protein, 22% to the nucleoprotein, 2.5% to the envelope protein, and it goes on and on all the way down. These are all on this column. Here's collagen, here's synapsin, that's part of your nerves, Dow protein, that's part of what's in your brain, and insulin, and phospholipids, that's what's in your bloodstream. So this concept, these numbers are jaw-dropping. And what it means, so I stopped sharing screen now. And what this means is that if you get the vaccine, there is the potential downside of down the road having an autoimmune reaction to your own body if you're sensitive to it. That's the potential. That's not great. So what do you do to minimize any risk of having a sensitivity reaction? You develop an anti-inflammatory lifestyle right now so that your immune system is as strong as it possibly can be. So you prepare yourself to receive the vaccine. You do everything you can to prepare. What does that mean? Stop eating garbage. Do everything that we're telling you to do. The polyphenols, the fruits and vegetables that Dr. Sally's talking about. I read an article last week. There are 5 different compounds that have been identified to help protect the receptors. Receptors are like a catcher's mitt. Pitcher throws the ball to the catcher. The receptors that sit on your cells that the virus is attracted to is called the ACE2 receptor. And the virus gets in the bloodstream through breathing or through what you're eating or drinking. The virus gets into the bloodstream and it goes into that receptor, turns the door handle, opens the door, the virus goes inside the cell. And that's where it does its damage. Not in the bloodstream, inside the cell. That's where it sheds and you get more virus and more virus and more virus. So there are 5 substances that are shown to reduce the possibility of the virus going into that receptor. And we've talked about them before, but there's a new one that just I read about called apenin. Apenin is in celery and parsley. So I told Marzi when she orders our organic produce, honey, get at least 7 bunches of celery a week and 4 or 5 bunches of parsley every week. She said, why? Because we're going to put it in our smoothies. We're going to have a little bit every day in our food just to help a little bit more. You've heard me talk about tonic water in the past, same kind of thing. Tonic water does a different mechanism, but it's just to protect you a little bit. So just make sure that you're doing the things that you're learning to have an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. Critically important. And so we all are more concerned about the virus than we are the vaccine. So just prepare yourself for the vaccine. How do I do that? Don't eat Haagen-Dazs or your own version of Haagen-Dazs, whatever it is right now, right? So make sure you and your family are staying as anti-inflammatory as possible. Dr. Sally, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I have a little tip on that compound. I learned it as apigenin, and it's in parsley. And there is a way to get it into your diet that is so delicious, and it's called chimichurri. Chimichurri is an Argentinian kind of pesto, and it is a blended mix of parsley, cilantro, and oregano with a little bit of shallots that you soak in red wine vinegar and olive oil and garlic, and you blend that up and get this paste that is literally delicious on everything. You will find yourself consuming a quarter of a cup of this chimichurri each day because it's good on eggs, it's good on any kind of protein, it's good on any kind of starch. It just makes everything taste good. I have a recipe for chimichurri on my website, drsallyskitchen.com, where you can go and just snag that recipe and have fun with it.
We will put the link here to that website, drsallyskitchen.com. When Marzi had an interview with you a while ago for that, it was great. She had a lot of fun with that one.
Yes,
Let's
and her
see.
power coffee is good.
Yeah, her power coffee, it is good, isn't it? It really is. A couple of questions about how long do I have to be off vitamin D before taking the test? And somewhere around 5 days is long enough so that you can find out what your level is. And Jan asks, where do you get the finger test for vitamin D? The link should be posted here for you. Dwin says, I'm taking 5,000 vitamin D a day. Do I take the test while on this, or do I need to stop it first? Stop for 5 days, Dwin, and you'll see how much your body is storing of vitamin D. Lori says, thanks for your time and expertise. My 40-year-old son has a lipoma, which was removed on his upper back between the shoulder blades. It grew back within a few months. What would your protocol be to find the root cause? Do you think it should be removed again? Dr. Sally, do you want to start with that one?
You know, lipomas are little benign fatty tumors. They are so common and they seem to run in families. Not everyone gets them, but many people do over the course of their life. So they are frustrating to the people that have them. I have one thing I've seen make them go away is to do some fasting, really cutting down temporarily your intake of fat, and they just kind of shrink. But once you introduce fat again, they can often regrow. I've seen people inject them with agents to try to shrink them. They are difficult to get rid of. So
I don't think you can successfully treat the lipoma. You have to treat the body with lipoma,
yeah,
which is why is my body making these fatty deposits? Well, let's look at your fat metabolism. Let's look at what your diet is. Let's look at your digestive capabilities. Let's look at your microbiome. There are so many things to look at. That's a functional medicine dream case because they usually respond really well once you know where the problem is, but you have to look to see where is the imbalance. How is that occurring? Linda Lou asks, what about grass-fed kefir or yogurt? Grass-fed is always better, and the bacteria in kefir and yogurt help to break down some of the protein structures, not so much the fat structures. But you can easily get and make coconut yogurt, coconut kefir, even goat yogurt. You don't have to use cow. So our recommendation is to avoid cow whenever and always, bottom line.
and coconut kefir is so delicious too.
Yeah,
And it's still supplying the same Lactobacillus acidophilus species.
Dr. Sally, Jennifer asks, what about probiotics relating to immunity?
That's an interesting question. There are, in other words, is there a specific type of probiotic that we're looking for? I can tell you that probiotics, the microbiome is intimately connected with our immune system. And it is essential that we feed it prebiotic, fiber-rich vegetables and fruit Mushrooms are a great source of prebiotics. So are all the fiber-rich veggies, yams, butternut squash, greens, everything. There's a new probiotic that's out on the market, though, that's kind of an interesting one. And those are the spore-forming bacteria that act like policemen in the system to down-regulate or tamp down the more disease-causing microbes. So I think spore-forming bacteria can be a nice one to introduce if you have been seeding your garden with the right fibers, and things like coconut yogurt to provide the lactobacillus species, which are some of the main constituents.
Shanquilo asks, do probiotics feed parasites or gut infections?
I don't think they do.
No,
I mean, what do
right.
you think?
Correct. No, not at all. Not at all. Mother Nature has set us up to live in harmony with these bacteria. So with these good bacteria, the problem is when you have too many of the bad guys, and when you take probiotics, you're taking the good guys, and the good guys are there to fight the bad guys. And one of the ways that they fight is just by sheer dominance, by number, and when we lose the good guys because of antibiotics and lifestyle, the things that we eat, the bad guys can rear their ugly head and just cause a world of problems. But probiotics, now, I've never seen a study ever, and I read a lot of studies. I've never seen one that cautions against probiotics increasing parasites or increasing infections. The only caveat to that, if you have severe intestinal permeability, I mean severe, you've got Crohn's or colitis, you've got severe permeability, you cannot take probiotics because they can cause a severe problem if these large bacteria, meaning they're not nestled into a community, but these free-floating bacteria go through a leaky gut into the bloodstream, it can cause a lot of problems. So you have to be careful if you have ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. For infants with enterocolitis, you've got to be really careful with the use of probiotics. But for the vast majority of people, not an issue at all that I've ever seen or read about. Dr. Sally, anything you want to add to that?
No, but I did want to double back to something that I just learned about, which is an article that your guest from last week, Dr. Alan Christensen, wrote on his website, The COVID Choice, which is outlining the various vaccines and helping the consumer to understand their choices.
Good suggestion. We'll post Dr. Christensen's website here so that you can check that one out. Maggie asks, any cheese from camel's milk? Not that I know of. I've not heard that. Princess asks, how do I increase my white blood cells, please? Dr. Sally, you want to start with that one?
Well, it's an interesting thing. We want to have our army at hand. We don't want to have super high levels of white blood cells all the time, which, I mean, like 10, 11 can be indicative of inflammation in the system. But to strengthen our white blood cells, I think it's important to, first of all, eat an immune supportive diet, rich in those veggies and fruits of all colors. And then you can use botanical medicines like echinacea, and even mushrooms help to strengthen and stimulate our white blood cells. I actually pulled something I wanted to show you guys. It's a little bit crazy, but I am growing a mushroom farm. And here it is. I've got it on a little platter, and it looks like a loaf of moldy bread. And out of it comes mushrooms that you can grow in your home. And so just simply eating things like shiitake mushrooms can help your immune system generate healthy, strong white blood cells.
I
Um,
fully agree and look forward to coming to your home for dinner and having the freshest mushrooms ever. Those
yeah.
look great. They look gross, but I know that they would taste great. I know they
Oh,
would.
they do.
The only caution on mushrooms, everyone, is that if you are fighting a fever, if your immune system is already highly activated, you do not want more white blood cells. With this current pandemic, IFM, the Institute of Functional Medicine, came out with an article a few months ago. Four of our faculty published this article that showed mushrooms are great. You take them preventively, they're great, or you take them in recovery. But if you're in the midst of an acute viral thing right now, don't take mushrooms. Because if you did, you can throw gasoline on the fire, enhancing more immune function. And the downside of that is called a cytokine storm. So that's the only time you want to be careful with things that increase white blood cells or increase immune function. Other nutrients that support immune function you can take at any time, like vitamin C, vitamin D. Those kind of things are safe throughout whatever phase you're in. If it's preventive, acute response, chronic hanging on for dear life, or the other side, recovery.
Yeah.
So you just need to be careful about that one.
And I want to add to that too, Dr. Tom. When we're acutely ill, we often don't have much of an appetite, and we need to listen to our body when it's in that state and keep our food intake really low. Like that would not be a time for ice cream. No sugar, no proteins. Eat very lightly. Maybe some bone broth, which certainly has some amino acids, but soups, teas, lots of water to stay hydrated, and give your body a temporary break so that the metabolism isn't stuck breaking down our food, but instead can bring the immune system to full bear to fight that infection. So I'm a fan of a fast when we're ill.
Exactly. Everyone knows when an animal is sick, it won't eat. It's smart enough not to eat. It's not going to go out and eat a pizza. And the reason for that is that when you don't eat, what you're mimicking is what we call timed interval fasting. The most common one's called the 8-16, that you eat all your food within 8 hours. And then for the following 16 hours, you don't eat. And then 8 hours, you eat your lunch and dinner, maybe you skip breakfast. And then 16 hours, you don't eat. 8-16 is most common. And what we know about that is that it stimulates more stem cell production. Stem cells are the cells that make new cells in your body. They're kind of like the igniting switch for new, healthier cells, new immune cells, new brain cells. And so you don't eat. So we'll talk about it more in another Facebook Live about why fasting mimicking diets or timed interval eating is so beneficial. And Dr. Sal, you're absolutely right that when you're not well, don't eat. It's the last thing you need. Some vegetable juices are great. Not too much fruit juice. Fruit
Right.
juice is a bunch of sweet, but vegetable juices are great for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually getting ready to teach an immune course. It's called the Healthy Immune Reset. And one of the courses we're going to devote to talking about intermittent fasting, time restricted eating. And I'm going to share my protocol for an easy to do 36-hour fast, which is just overnight, one day, and break the fast the next day, so that you don't have to walk around feeling low blood sugar and achy and uncomfortable. There are ways to nourish your body with teas, broths, juices. And so I wanted to make sure that you knew that there's some education available for that.
Thank you so much. Does having elevated Saccharomyces cerevisiae mean low immune system? No, it means you've got an elevated yeast count. You've got too much yeast, and the question would be why? And you really want to identify that, because if you have elevated antibodies, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, they can cause a number of different autoimmune mechanisms in your body. So you'd want to explore where that's coming from. All right, everyone, we've gone 15 minutes over. My gosh, I'm so sorry, but Dr. Sal, you and I could just go on for hours doing this. Thank
It
you
was
so
fun.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we'll have all the links here for you, for everyone. And we will see you again next week. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye.